Hello, my friend. Happy New Year. I hope your year has been off to an amazing start. And if it hasn't, I hope this episode can serve as a little oasis, a little escape, and a little daydream to help you plan for your 2025 travel goals. I've definitely been there where I've arrived somewhere and been like, oh, doesn't quite look like the picture. And that can be quite a struggle as a traveler is to know what advice to take and where should I go. And I have a limited amount of PTO and money and, it's all the things. So today, I'm going to share with you a little travel inspiration to start the year, of course. I'm going to share with you the top travel trends that I've seen as a travel advisor, a group travel leader, so that you can have an idea of what's on the rise, what is, the type of travel that people are leaning into, and where you could really be one of the first few to experience that type of travel before it blows up, as places tend to do once Instagram gets its hands on it. And also, the publication Photos, they put out their 2025 no list, which basically means their list of places not to travel to for a variety of reasons, which this is a really interesting take because often you hear of the best of travel and the upcoming destinations and the places to go to. And this is a really interesting take because they're saying, please don't travel to these places if you can, because of a variety of reasons, which I'm going to get into. But instead of being all doom and gloom, I'm going to give you some of my own personal recommendations of alternatives to these countries or places that Photos is saying don't go to, like emerging destinations, and also alternatives of maybe still how to visit those hotspots, but with a slightly different twist. So it's a great experience for you, and it's also a positive experience for that country itself. So, are we ready? Let's get going. All right, one of the biggest trends that we have seen over the last few years, but specifically in the last, I would say, 2 years, is the rise of solo travel. And I want to be very clear here that solo travel has been around since the beginning of time. Back in the day, the 80s, 90s, it used to be called independent travel because a lot of travel, especially through Europe, was packaged trips. So it used to be maybe called independent travel. Now we're calling it solo travel. And I want to be very clear here that solo travel does not mean single travel. That's a very distinct difference. Solo travel is a person who is deciding to go travel on their own, perhaps meeting up with a group of people for a retreat or for a group trip for a portion of their trip. But this solo person, they could have a partner, they could be married, they could have a huge friend group at home, but they just either that partner or the spouse or friends don't want to travel or they can't travel. And this person's like, heck no, I'm still traveling. I'm still going out there. So this rise of solo travel is a very important trend because what we're seeing is there's a massive rise in solo female travel, with flights being so much more easily able to book. They're a little bit, they're not cheaper than they were in the last like 5 years. They're definitely getting more expensive. But in the grand scheme of the history of air travel, air travel is a lot less expensive and more accessible. And there's a lot of ways to make travel safer now, which is why we're seeing such a big rise in female travelers. Companies focusing on women only travel has seen a 230% increase in bookings. And not only that, a whopping 64% of all travelers worldwide are women, and 84% of those women are solo travelers. So just let that kind of like sink in for a little bit. 64% of all travelers worldwide are women. And among those 64%, 84% of those are solo travelers. That's just wild. And it just shows the amount of empowerment that women are feeling by going off on their own. I think of my grandma in the 80s and the 90s, that when she had gotten divorced and her sister was also solo, and they would go on their own together and travel around the world to places like Egypt and the Amazon and Israel. And it's mind-blowing to me that they used to do that in the 80s and 90s, given all the tools that we have now as solo female travelers, to think what they went through to be able to get from point A to point B. I'd give them so much credit. So the really cool thing about these statistics is you would think that this is going to be like the intrepid 18 to 25-year-old range of ages, but actually the large majority of solo female travelers are actually aged between 45 to 65, even with that 65 plus being a big portion of what we're seeing with solo female travelers. So women are like, I've got the funds, I've got the time, I've got my health still. I want to get out there and explore, and I'm not going to wait for my husband or my partner or my friend to go with me. And it's a huge piece of marketing for a lot of brands at the moment. There's a lot of women only tours, there's a lot of women only hotels and hostels and stuff like that. And among those group of people that were polled through this study that I'm citing right now, 63% of them said that they were traveling solo because I want to see the world and I don't want to wait for others. And I love that. I love that. So the next travel trend that we're seeing is multi-generational family trips and also multi-family groups traveling together. So it's two distinct differences there. Multi-generational trips is where grandma, aunt, mom and dad, kids, grandkids, they're all going together. Sometimes three generations of family traveling together. In my latest trip to Australia, we had 4 generations all together. My kids, my husband and I, my husband's parents, and my husband's grandma. 4 generations all together. Family travel is the largest U.S. leisure segment. It makes up the biggest portion of U.S. travel, constituting around 40% of the trips. And the key drivers for multi-generational trips is family bonding, shared experiences, the educational benefits for children. And now they're saying nearly 46% of family travel involves multiple generations. So I think that's just really cool that there's the ability to have this increased time spent together from the grandkids all the way up to potentially even the great grandparents. And the multifamily is a little bit different to multi-generational because multifamily means groups of families traveling together. So not the grandparents, kids, and parents. This is like my best friends and their kids and my other best friends and their kids all going down to Costa Rica together and traveling together. And that has been such a game changer for us, especially with young children. Is you'd think, okay, there's 5 kids under the age of 5 under one roof for a week. It's going to be absolutely manic. And it was. I'm speaking specifically about our trip to Costa Rica last year with our best friends. And it was manic, it was chaos, but also the kids totally played with each other the whole time. We got breaks as parents. We would turn to my friends and I'd say, hey, we have all the kids, you go down and go surf for a bit. And then they would come back and we would swap. Multi-family trips are on the rise. So grab your best friends, grab your kids' best friends, and go travel together. Next on the list is authentic experiences and going one step deeper into expedition travel. Of course, when we travel, we want to have the most authentic experience. We want to have interactions with the local culture, potentially going one step deeper and having indigenous interactions that are ethical, of course. And we're seeing that travelers are really looking for that. So, and we're even seeing that in the sense that there is a little bit of a shift into people booking more boutique family run hotels because they want to have that experience of having a little bit more of that connection to the culture. And with this expedition piece the segment in the travel industry is called expedition cruises. But it's more than a cruise. It's not going to be your 5,000 person cruise with 50 different activities and shows and casinos. This is for the traveler who is trying to get to Antarctica. This is for the small cruiser that is on a small ship going to the Galapagos. This is for the cruiser who wants to get to really remote islands through Papua New Guinea, through the French Polynesian Islands. So it's a very unique experience of really that intrepid experience of visiting lesser visited places, but also having the support, the beauty, the luxury of a small ship with usually around 100 guests or less. So that's what we're really seeing right now is those authentic experiences, people searching for that, people wanting wanting to book those really unique boutique hotels, and also going one step deeper into that expedition travel where they are going and potentially being some of the first few people to travel there for leisure. Now, of course, there's people from across the millennia of of people exploring and reaching the farthest corners of the earth, but you could be a part of a very small, unique group of like-minded travelers who are interested in that type of travel, especially this niche travel that I'm going to get into in a second. In the new year, many of us are setting resolutions and embracing new challenges, like dry January. But just because you're cutting back on alcohol doesn't mean you have to miss out on the joy of cracking open a great beer on your next vacation. That's where Best Day Brewing comes in. Brewed in Northern California and crafted for the doers, the trailblazers, the early risers, the adventurers, yes, that's you, Best Day creates the perfect non-alcoholic beer for life's special moments. Whether you're relaxing on the beach or celebrating a great day on the slopes, life is chock full of moments that deserve a great beer, but not the booze. And let me tell you, Best Day delivers with the world's best tasting craft beer, minus the alcohol. You get all the flavor and none of the compromise. I've been alcohol-free for over a year, and Best Day has been my best bud throughout this process of feeling better than ever. Their Kolsch, Electro Lime, and Hazy IPA are my go-to favorites. Learn more and shop at bestdaybrewing.com or at Best Day Brewing on Instagram. Cheers to your best day yet. The next trend that we're seeing is, like I just said, this word niche. Niche group trips and retreats. Retreats have been around forever, and oftentimes we think of retreats like the yoga retreat or a plant medicine retreat or even like a leadership, a corporate retreat. But what we're seeing right now is a massive push in niche group trips and retreats. So travelers are preferring, if they are going into a group travel experience, they're preferring smaller groups, and they are willing to pay a higher price for a bus that is half full. So they want to have that more intimate experience. It's allowing for more personal space. It's allowing for the intimate experience to get to know your guide more, ask more questions. And they're seeking a more relaxed and slower paced itinerary that focuses on, again, those deeper experiences with fewer destinations per trip. So sometimes you can think of these group travel trips where they're seeing a new destination every 2 days, maybe even every day. And what we're seeing right now is a trend in people looking for fewer destinations, but going deeper into those destinations. I think the sharp rise in female travelers is driving destinations to rethink their group offerings because women tend to feel safer in groups, of course, and they're appealing to that kind of niche. And retreats and group trips are not just for the yogi or not just for the wellness space, which of course is something that I specialize in with my group tour company R&R. But also there are scuba diving retreats and group trips. There's photography trips. There's hiking. There's people who want to go with specific influencers now because they're going to learn how they take pictures or they're going to learn their top tips. So for a wide variety of active interests, there is a group trip out there. And if you want to know more about our upcoming retreats, if you want to travel with me, check out our website, travelwithrnr.com. Kind of piggybacking off the idea of retreats, the next trend is seeing a very sharp rise in a demand for wellness travel. So, of course, you have your classic wellness resorts, your wellness spas, and they've been around for a really long time. They do it really, really well. But what we're seeing beyond that is people want wellness baked into their trip. They might not want to go to that specific hotel that's a specific program that's specifically for wellness. They want to go to Greece and they want to feel good about it. So in this article by National Geographic, they said that the number of people concerned about their health and well-being has obviously skyrocketed since the pandemic began. And 80% of people surveyed by this research done by the Public Health England in 2020, they reported wanting to change their lifestyle in 2021 to become healthier. And this is something that we're seeing also being mirrored in the travel industry. Over a fifth of global travelers are currently traveling for health and wellness-driven reasons in 2022. That was research done by the luxury travel network Virtuoso. And it's showing that global travelers are stating interest for wellness reasons reaching close to 30%. These trends include travel to reconnect, to build better relationships, to focus on sleep, to really learn how to rest. And we're really seeing, a massive trend in people that are wanting to learn how to kind of reboot their health through travel. And a good example of this is there's an amazing hotel on Miami Beach called W South Beach. Shout out to our friends at W South Beach. And I was just touring their hotel, and he was talking about, our friend Diego was talking about how in each room they actually have different sets of lights to help with your circadian rhythm. There's different sets of lights to kind of warm the lights as you get closer to nighttime so that you get into a deeper state of sleep later on. They have different types of water. They have an on-site spa with loads of different treatments. That's not just your stock standard, massage and facial. It's really going one step further in how hotels are offering wellness, not just through a specific program, but how it's just baked into the everyday life of their guests. And finally, the last trend is using travel advisors. So obviously there was a massive plunge in the travel advising industry in 2020 with the pandemic. But we're really starting to see an accelerated growth of travel agency bookings, jumping 120% in 2022 alone. Travel advisors are in high demand, with the number of travelers using them expected to grow. So in 2023, 38% of Gen Z and millennial travelers said they preferred booking a travel agent over online booking. And so this is the thing. We have been in a DIY era for travel for a long time, if you're anything like me. And now we're getting to the age where our time, our money, our resources are valuable. And the only thing that is finite in this aspect is our time. We can always make more money. We can always find a way to enhance, delegate, optimize, all the things. But our time is finite. And how we use that time needs to be very strategic. How we travel needs to be strategic. And it's not to say that you can't have your spontaneous trip. Of course, it's one of my favorite types of trips. But people are realizing, in the same way that you might have a financial advisor to help you advise on how to strategically move your money around, invest your money, and really know what's happening on a year-on-year basis, why do we not do the same with our only finite part of our life, which is our time? We have a limited amount of time on this earth and we don't know when it's going to run out. So why are we not being strategic with the way in which we use that time, specifically when we travel? I think it's very interesting that Gen Z is one of the growing generations of using travel advisors because they're realizing, I don't have time to book this amazing trip for my family, for my friends, but I want to make sure that it's going to get the most positive ROI that I possibly can. And they're using travel advisors to do that. So travel advisors are a great way to make sure you're maximizing your ROI of your trips. And it doesn't have to be, every single hour you have something on the itinerary. A travel advisor is really just there to literally advise you. No, I would recommend, if you want to do this destination, maybe travel in this month instead, so you're not fighting for a beach chair. Oh, you know what? I know an amazing restaurant that's a hole in the wall around this corner, and no one's going to be there, and you're going to have the best pad thai you've ever had in your life. It's those types of tips, that's the advising portion of it, that makes it different to back in the day, a travel agent. And people are really using travel advisors to optimize their time with their families, really optimize their travels, and even get amazing perks, amazing amenities that they wouldn't have otherwise gotten had they done it the DIY route. So that's my little plug on travel advisors, because I am a travel advisor. So if you heard that and you were like, wow, that sounds amazing, feel free to reach out to me and we can chat about your 2025 travel goals and create a strategy for you to make sure that you're optimizing your year and optimizing your travels. All right, so we heard the trends and we know what's coming up, and everything is feeling like, yeah, let's get out in the world, let's go see it. And then bum, 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 Voters comes out with their 2025 no list. And this is not to say that you can't visit these places. They're just trying to give reasons as to why you might want to choose elsewhere, or you might want to use your economic dollar to support an up and coming location, because some of these places are really, really, really struggling to maintain waste management, to maintain water quality, to maintain affordable rent prices for locals. So I'm going to just kind of jump through this list a little bit and give you my alternatives. Number one, which is kind of on the evergreen list of places that are just struggling to manage tourism, is Bali. I know, we love Bali. However, the way in which the writer wrote this quote, I was like, oh my God. He mentioned that Bali is like the plastic apocalypse. And it's so spot on. I got goosebumps because I remember surfing in Bali, and I would literally be surfing through piles of trash. You would actually be nervous surfing because you wouldn't know what was going to hit you in the face if you fell off. It's definitely something to keep an eye on. Some of the most picturesque beaches in Bali are just literally covered from head to toe in plastic. So it just might not be the exact experience that you were looking for. And they're really struggling with how to handle how fast Bali's tourism has developed without the proper planning, without the proper sustainability development rules. And it's really caused serious damage to the island's environment and to its natural resources. So if you are like, hey, I really want to go to Indonesia still, don't tell me not to go to Bali. I'm not saying that. I would maybe look into an alternative in Indonesia is Lombok, which is very, very close to Bali. You still get really great surf, but without the crowds. And if you're really into surfing, you might want to go one step farther and go into the Mentawais. It is also getting very crowded there too, especially with the surf tourism. But just something to consider is there's so many islands in Indonesia. You don't just have to go to Bali. And if you're willing to forego perhaps an Indonesian holiday, which I would still go visit other islands if you could, but Sri Lanka is an amazing alternative as well. You have safari, you have surf, you have scuba diving, you still have that mixture of Hinduism and Buddhism into the culture. The food is great. It's very small, easy to get around. So that is also an awesome alternative if you are trying to be more sustainably minded as you travel. Very similarly, they mentioned Koh Samui, again, with the waste management. Water quality is under constant stress and threat. I was just there in January, and although I was shielded by a lot of these issues because I was at a very nice resort, they are very nervous about what's to come because White Lotus season 3, I believe, was just filmed there and it's about to release this year. And very similar to what's happened now in Sicily, because White Lotus season 2 was in Sicily, they're nervous about the influx of tourism traffic that is to come when they're already crumbling under what to do with waste management, what to do with water quality. Again, they're also in a very similar plastic apocalypse. So if you're considering a trip to Thailand and you wanted to include an island, I would highly recommend Koh Yao Noi. It's just off the coast of Phuket, very easy to get to, very small, very local, authentic experience, amazing, beautiful hotels still there. There's Koh Leap as well, or if you still wanted to be on the Koh Samui side, on the east coast of Thailand, there's also Koh Tao, which is kind of a diving mecca. Again, that can get a little bit crowded too, but it won't be as crowded as Koh Samui. In the article as well, they spoke about Europe as a whole. So places like Barcelona, Mallorca, Venice, they're seeing a massive resurgence of locals not being very happy with the cruise industry and with tourists coming to visit. They're making it very clear that they're not happy that tourists are there. They're spraying water guns. They're throwing trash at the tourists. There's signs and graffiti everywhere that say tourists go home. And again, it's not to say not to visit these places. It's just to maybe consider perhaps a different time of year when it won't be so crowded with cruise tourists, perhaps a shoulder season, maybe even in the winter. Something to consider is Italy is having their Jubilee year this year in 2025. So hotspots in the summer, specifically like Rome, Florence, and Venice, they're going to be at a fever pitch with crowds and lines. If Italy is on your bucket list and 2025 is your year to go, still go, but see if maybe you can visit in the fall or the spring, or maybe even visiting lesser known areas. Now, this one was really interesting. I saw on the list Mount Everest, and you'd think, it's the mountain, it's very sacred, they're going to take care of it. But in the last 25 years, visitors have more than doubled. And today, around 58,000 people visit Mount Everest annually. As a result, a lot of these villages along the base camp trek, it's one of the most popular in the area, it has drastically changed. And the influx of services and amenities that is required to host this many people has amounted to unimaginable amounts of trash. And it's too much for them to keep up with, nor should they have been put in this situation. I know that Mount Everest and trekking to base camp is a bucket list, of course, and I don't really have like an alternative to have that exact experience, but other alternatives could be the Annapurna trek or the Gokyo Lakes trek as well. So something to keep in consideration if you wanted to do any trekking around Nepal. Now, places that photos had said are beginning to suffer are places like Sicily because of the White Lotus effect. They're really struggling with water shortages. And this past summer in 2024, some accommodations even limited their bookings in August because they literally could not guarantee that they could flush toilets or have functioning showers. Something to keep in mind. A really it's crazy to think how much pop culture and TV shows can have an effect on places like these. But if you just think about how old and ancient these communities are, they just weren't built to equip this many people flocking to the area. So an alternative to Sicily could be Sardinia, although that's getting very popular now, or even potentially jumping to a different country and heading over to Crete in Greece. Again, Crete is a very popular cruise destination, but again, there's ways to kind of combat that by staying at private homes and having more authentic experiences. Also on the list was the British Virgin Islands. I've done a private catamaran through the British Virgin Islands. I've stayed at a private home on Tortola. So I personally haven't seen the signs of suffering. But what the article highlights is that the cruise tourism dollars is not only attributing to a lot of trash, but it's keeping the dollars out of the residents and the locals' hands. And the British Virgin Islands is one of those types of places where the ecosystem is so delicate and we don't want to disrupt that. Again, it's a beautiful place in the world. I highly recommend still visiting, but perhaps instead of taking a big cruise ship, if you can, take a private catamaran or a smaller boat. It can still be a group boat, but maybe a smaller boat, or pick one of the islands and stay at a private home there and really get to see what island life is all about. Other places on the list were places like Japan, Oaxaca, Mexico, Scotland's North Coast 500. I personally haven't been to any of these, so I don't have a real stake in the matter or a real informed opinion. I thought it was very interesting to see Scotland on the list because it's not somewhere that I would have ever pinned to be on a no list for sustainability and over tourism. However, it's just these are things to think about as you're starting to plan your 2025 adventures is, okay, am I going to a country that might be suffering from over tourism? If I still really want to go to this country because it's on my bucket list, maybe there's another time of year that I can travel to. So I'm not going to be going during the peak of tourism when the local community might be really struggling to keep up with the over tourism. Maybe there's another place or another destination that you can visit that might give you the same feeling and the same type of culture and the same type of transformation that you're looking for when you travel without overburdening these communities that are struggling with water shortages, struggling with plastic, struggling with waste management. All of those things. We don't want to become part of the problem. Of course, we want to support locations and destinations with our economic dollar, but we also want to make sure that we're doing this in a super sustainable and mindful way. I think that's part of the overarching future of travel in 2025 and beyond is how do we not become part of the problem? How can we be a part of the solution? And these are just things to think in mind as we start getting more strategic with our travel ahead. So again, as I mentioned, if you are planning or wanting to plan a bucket list trip, a staycation, a group family trip, you might not have the time. You might not even know where to start. I'm your girl. I am your trusted travel advisor. I am here to help you make the trip of your dreams come true without you having to deal with all the nitty gritty. I am the queen of nitty gritty. I am here for you. So please reach out. You can email me at transformwithtravel@gmail.com or reach out to me on Instagram at Transform with Travel. And I will see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening and have a wonderful rest of your day.